Good afternoon and welcome to Law and Crime. I'm Angelica Spanos. Thanks so much for joining us this afternoon. We have breaking news right now in Amber Guyger's trial out of Dallas, Texas. A jury found Amber Guyger guilty of murder. They began their deliberations yesterday and went for about 3 hours. They started again this morning with deliberations, went for another couple of hours, and that verdict just came in moments ago. We want to play that for you now. So Amber Guyger now faces 5 to 99 years in prison. After 30 years, she could be eligible for parole, is what we're told. The court will resume at 2 p.m. Eastern time, and that's when they will probably sort out a schedule for the sentencing. We don't know exactly when that will happen at this point. The same jury will decide her prison sentence. We are waiting there in Texas for a press conference to start. So when that happens, we will, of course, bring you that live here on the network. With me right now is Ashley McMahan, criminal defense attorney, and Ann Bremner, trial attorney. Ashley, let's start with you. What's your reaction to this verdict?
Well, first of all, Angelica, it's great to be here today. Honestly, I am pretty surprised. I did not think that the prosecution got beyond the verdict to prove this case, and the jury was going to do a non-legal verdict and sort of, as we call it, now split in half and find her maybe guilty of manslaughter, but certainly not of murder. So this is surprising to me.
Absolutely, and that seems to be what a lot of people kind of thought before we got this verdict right now. A lot of people were leaning more toward that manslaughter charge rather than the murder charge. But I guess people and this jury believed that this was a cold-blooded murder.
Yes, apparently they did. And I got to tell you, I think the demographics of the jury made a big difference. And I'm speaking mainly about how many females were on the jury, because I think a lot of the defense relied on jurors finding their client sympathetic and that her mistakes were reasonable. And I think it's very difficult. You have an uphill battle when you have a predominantly female jury and a female defendant, which most trial attorneys know. So I'm a little surprised that they got such a heavily weighted female jury past voir dire.
And another thing that's kind of surprising is how quickly this took. I'm shocked that they're done already and we got it this early.
Well, that's always an indication of a prosecution verdict. So, in my experience, and, I'm sure this is not, some divine rule, but this seems to be in practice how it always works out. Usually they are for the state.
Right. All right. Well, during the trial, we saw Amber Guyger take the stand. This was a key part of the whole trial. Obviously, the defendant on the stand here. Let's throw to that so we can listen back. All right, Ashley, that was the first time and part of Amber's testimony there. She was very emotional. She explained her story there. Do you think this ended up helping or hurting her in the long run that she testified?
I think it hurt her. I think that it was kind of the only option that they had, because they had to make her seem sympathetic, and they had to make it, their case rested on whether or not it was reasonable for her to be in fear of her life while she was in the apartment or as she was entering the apartment. And the main problem that I think the defense had here is that, unfortunately, we've got the 911 call that she made. And the 911 call right after she had shot victim in this case, walked into an innocent man's apartment and shot him, at point blank range to the chest, killing him. Many times over, she repeated on that 911 call that she was going to lose her job, that she was concerned about her job. And she was texting with her, partner at the same time as well. I think the jury watched the crocodile tears and thought, we're not buying this at all, because we heard you moments after you were allegedly in fear for your life, and you certainly didn't sound like it.
Right. Do you think that there will be an appeal here with her defense attorneys? What happens next?
I think almost certainly there has to be. As a defense attorney, you're always looking to preserve the record, even when you think you have a slam dunk case and you think there's no way this jury is going to come back with a guilty verdict for my client. So you do everything you can during the trial, and you compile all of that, and you automatically file for an appeal on something, especially in a case like this, where you have a murder charge and then an incongruent lesser included manslaughter charge. I wouldn't be surprised if they're filing for a supersedeas bond in order to secure her bond to be out while she awaits appeal. I'm not sure if it'll be granted in this case, but with a different group of 12 people, this outcome could have been totally different with the same facts. Juries are very unpredictable.
Exactly. We'll have to wait and see what happens with that appeal. All right. That was that infamous 911 call from Amber Guyger's trial. With me right now, Ann Bremner, trial attorney. I want to bring you in to weigh in on this. You just heard it here. What do you think of this guilty verdict?
I'm not surprised. I think that given that this was a mistake of fact case, it's kind of it was an either or, like a not guilty or guilty. And the fact when she testified and said, when asked, did you intend to kill him? She said yes. I think for a jury, that probably was the nail in the coffin for her. They're not looking at recklessness. They're not looking at a defense of mistake of fact. Was it reasonable? Apparently, if they looked at it, it wasn't. They found it wasn't. And so then you simply look at her actions. You look at her focus on herself. You look at her text to her lover, boyfriend. You look at her failure to render aid immediately to her victim. And all those things put together added up to murder. I've defended police officers for decades out here in Seattle with Portland Police, Seattle, and other departments, even including Chicago. Jurors give them the benefit of the doubt, but I always thought in this case, they didn't see her as a cop. They saw her as basically an individual who committed murder.
All right, so a guilty verdict there. Ann Bremner, trial attorney, with me, as well as Ashley McMahan, criminal defense attorney. And one of the options that the jury had was to give Guyger a guilty of the manslaughter offense, which
Right.
of course is lesser than murder. You said you weren't surprised that that didn't happen.
Well, right, because the question is whether she had a mistaken belief or not. And then in Texas, they don't have two tiers of manslaughter like a lot of jurisdictions, first and second degree recklessness and then negligence. They're combined together. And so, how far is recklessness from actual intent to kill? And I think that then looking at the story and everything that she said, they determined that she committed this with intent to kill. And like I said before, she said she had that intent. And she said she had that intent. So how do you give her recklessness?
Right. All right. And Guyger is now going to face 5 to 99 years in prison. We're told that after 30 years, she could be eligible for parole. But of course, that all has to be figured out later on. The sentencing will be organized when the court and the judge come back into that courtroom. And that's not supposed to happen till about 2 p.m. today. So, Ashley, what do you think about this sentencing here? Where do you think it'll go? What happens with all of that?
Well, like I said, I think, her attorneys are immediately going to apply for an appeal or move for an appeal. It would be crazy for them not to file anything. And as far as the sentencing goes, we'll find out. I'm not really sure and haven't gotten a good feel for, what the judge thinks of all this. And if, sometimes the judge will make determinations that we only notice once they get on the bench for sentencing and they let us know what's going on. I'm not sure what's going to happen, but I'm excited to watch it.
Yes, as we all are here too. One of the things we saw earlier was the family celebrating when this verdict came out, and we have that video we can play. But we're also waiting for a press conference, and that press conference is getting underway right now, actually, I'm told. So let's throw back to that live right now. Okay, so we just went live to that press conference. This is happening in Dallas, Texas, at the courthouse where the verdict was just read. That was Dominique Alexander. He is an activist, and he explains how he's part of an organization that has been rallying for justice for the victim here, Botham Jean. I'm assuming we will hear many more accounts from people like Dominique here. Hopefully, we'll also hear from some family members. Ashley and Ann, what else do you think we'll see out of this press conference, and how do you think this is now going to affect any police cases going forward?
Well,
Sorry, go ahead.
Ann, go ahead.
Okay, well, we just talked about that she was not on duty, but an officer is always an officer. And I think that there will be an impact, and that's what they're talking about right here. I think that it's being viewed as police brutality and also an impactful on race relations. And that's the way it's being portrayed, and that's the way it'll be carried forth, given this press conference and given what we've seen thus far surrounding this trial.
Absolutely. And one of the things that we know is this trial gained national attention. And as you said, maybe because of the race thing, but it just sparked a lot of attention. Many people know about this trial. We're following it closely. Ashley, what do you think about this, how this will set some sort of precedent maybe going forward for these types of issues?
Well, I mean, unfortunately, there has been a lot in the news recently, with predominantly white police officers shooting unarmed African-American, threats or criminals, and then claiming this, hey, I was reasonably in fear for my life. So this is a hot button issue, and it is based on a race issue, whether or not we want to admit that. And here we know that after police arrived, that Amber was allowed to ride in the front of the police cruiser. She was not handcuffed. She was not put in the back seat. She was given preferential treatment, however you want to look at it, and treated differently by these police officers once they arrived on scene. And I think that was a slap in the face to every community activist and really every citizen in Dallas who has seen these police shootings on the news. And here you have one, she's not even on duty. She's walked into a stranger's home who was lawfully sitting at home and shot him in the chest. And here she is being allowed to ride in the front seat. I think it rubbed a lot of people the wrong way. And I'm not surprised it's coming up now.
All right, Ashley, thank you. You're looking live right now at one of the attorneys from Botham Jean's family. This again at that press conference live. Let's go there. All right, so that was Botham Jean's family attorneys. We also heard from some activists, and they all touched on the fact that this is setting a tone. This is peeling back a veil that was hiding a lot of these injustices that people were receiving in Texas. They also alluded to the issues with the Dallas Police Department and talked about how now this is eye-opening and things are going to be investigated further and there needs to be accountability. Ashley, what do you think this means for police use of force?
Well, Angelica, unfortunately, these police shootings of unarmed people are part of our zeitgeist, and they're just not something that I think have been so publicized before everybody started carrying around a cell phone and now has the power of a video camera being in their pocket at all times. And, I think it's a good thing that the state got this verdict on this case. The way that they were trying to use the Castle Doctrine in this case, and I understand and I can appreciate the defense counsel being creative, but it was extremely confusing for the jury. And the Castle Doctrine is essentially what protects somebody if an intruder comes into your home and you have the right to defend your home. You have the right to use deadly force in your home. And when they tried to flip that and say that that applied to Amber, even though she wasn't in her home, only because she believed that she was, I'm not surprised that the jury didn't buy that at all and may have even found it offensive, to be frank with you.
Right. And talking about the Castle Doctrine, to go back a little bit, on Monday, the judge said that the jury could consider the Castle Doctrine in their deliberations. And that basically means that people are allowed to use deadly force without retreating first in their occupied homes, vehicles, or workplaces. This is a Texas law there. So, and one of the activists or attorneys in this press conference just spoke to that and said, now the defense really doesn't have to appeal anything because they wanted, they wanted that in there and they got that. So what are they really going to appeal? And what do you think about that?
I thought that was an excellent point. I mean, Castle Doctrine obviously has to be in your own house, and it's a stand your ground kind of a law. And she, was able to use that. And so I think when you look at the kind of jury instructions that she got, many cases, I should say, most civil cases and many criminal cases are reversed, as we know, on jury instructions. And so the judge said, here, You want this, even though it may be borderline in terms of whether or not it's applicable in your case? I'm going to give you that instruction. She gave her the types of things that she needed to argue her case. And then you look at what are the appellate issues in this case. There may be very few.
Exactly. All right, we're going to throw back to that verdict and play that again for you. If you haven't seen it yet, watch now.
We, the jury, unanimously find the defendant, Amber Guyger, guilty of murder as charged in the indictment. No outburst. And it is signed by the presiding juror, who is juror number 11. Mr. Rogers, would you like to have the jury poll?
All right, so Amber Guyger, guilty of murder here. One of the things we just heard in the press conference, it was one of the attorneys say that this verdict is for Trayvon Martin. This is for Michael Brown, Eric Gardner, obviously recalling other police brutality type of cases here, and how this is going to be a really big win for that whole movement, for justice for African Americans in what they are deeming to be unfair trials. Ashley, what do you think about that? Do you agree with that?
Well, I have to tell you, I do. And it's really difficult, to deny that this is a pervasive problem in our culture in America today when you hear all of those names listed out one after another. And I thought one of the other activists who spoke earlier made an excellent point that, Botham Jean was a model citizen. And it is so unfortunate that it took, an officer shooting an unarmed model citizen, college graduate working for one of the top accounting firms in the country to get justice. So it really goes to show that there's a underlying problem here that needs to be addressed. And hopefully today this is one part of the pie.
All right, Ashley, thank you. We have a package that we want to play for you, a story that Aaron Keller, our own, did here about the life of Botham Jean. Let's play that.
I am Botham Jean, and I am a senior accounting and management information systems major, and I am from the island of St. Lucia.
That is the voice, and this is the face of the man whose life ended with the pull of a trigger in Dallas. With me. Chaos surrounded Botham Jean's final moments, but friends and family remember other things, a bright smile and uplifting music. At Harding University, a Christian college in Arkansas,
Let's praise God this morning.
Jean was an active singer.
Bless the Lord, oh my soul.
Oh, my soul. Follow the law.
In the trial of his shooter, Botham Jean's sister described him from the witness stand as his portrait sat nearby.
When he started high school, he started a choir at the high school. He also started song leading at our church, Church of Christ, and he fell in love with music. He even wrote songs, church songs.
Mourners who attended Jean's funeral wore red, his favorite color.
He was very active in his community, in his hometown in St. Lucia, in terms of serving the youth and in terms of just doing a lot of community service.
Attorney Sue Ann Robinson is of counsel to a law firm which represents Jean's relatives.
The family does definitely want Amber Guyger brought to justice for what she did. I think the outcome is going to be a conviction on murder. That is the outcome that they're looking for.
Yes, there is evidence Botham Jean was not perfect. He used marijuana to treat ADHD. When that became public, critics lashed out at those who thought it disparaged him. And back at Harding, Jean leaves a legacy.
Let the weak say I am strong.
The university and his family cherish the music.
We found 4 songs that he wrote, all about Christ and wanting to get to heaven.
It's not just notes and words. A planned $50,000 scholarship in Jean's honor swelled to more than $500,000 with support from his employer.
The family has chosen to deal with it by celebrating his life as opposed to focusing on how his life has ended.
Botham Jean. A life ended with tragedy, a legacy of hope.
Just a little talk with Jesus makes it right.
Oh, it's all right.
It's all right.
This is Aaron Keller for the Law and Crime Network.
It's alright, just a little talk with Jesus makes it right.
All right, so a touching tribute there by Aaron Keller to Botham Jean's life. Again, to reiterate, a jury just found former Dallas police officer Amber Guyger guilty of murder. This was after about 5 hours of deliberation. We are breaking this down, covering everything about this verdict live for you now on Law and Crime. We're taking a break, but stay with us for when we come back.